welcome to the Bullcast Podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me today is Court Winsett.
Hello, world.
We've kind of had some fun episodes. We talked about Cinco de Mayo. We've talked about mothers. We did that whole deep dive about the stock market.
So it's time to bring the tone down a little bit. We want to be a little bit more depressing because we've been doing too many fun ones.
Too many uppers. We've done episodes where we talk about if you had a house that your aging parents, did they gift it to you while they're alive? Did they leave it to you when they pass away? But one of the things that I know we come across a lot on the financial advisory side and the legal side is inheriting debt from family members. Mm-hmm. This is a big thing where everyone's worried about what kind of debt is going to be hitting me when my mom dies.
Yeah.
How do we handle this? Mm-hmm. And so we're going to kind of go into that a little bit more in this episode, inheriting debt from a family member. Now, before we get into that, we've got a list. I want to be full disclaimer. Now, in this day and age with social media and with articles, it's so hard to stay away from spoilers.
Yes.
There's a couple of shows that are kind of recently just off the air, but it's at least been a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. I will say that what we're going to do is this is the most shocking deaths in television history.
Yes.
We're going to say the name of the show first, give you a half a second. So if you need to jump off because you don't want to hear who we're talking about, because I had to already apologize to Court because number one,
spoiler lols,
spoiled him immediately. And there's several shows on here that I have earmarked for my postpartum that when I'm up late at night with babies, I'm going to try and start binge watching these shows. So I'm just going to have to forget that I remember these names.
Yes.
First one is going to be Succession. Love this show. Y'all know that Shiv is my spirit animal. This would be Logan Roy.
Ah, yes. Yes, this is the one that I didn't know about. I didn't know that he was dead because I haven't gotten that far yet. So that
but this definitely, that was a crucial part of that season where it's navigating what to do now that Logan's gone.
Number 2 on the list is Adriana Lacerva. Adriana was Christopher's girlfriend on The Sopranos, and she was off in the middle of the woods out in New Jersey. I don't think many people that watched Sopranos were all that surprised that they...
I feel like everybody does. Sopranos is on my list to watch, but I feel like a show like that, you can't get attached to anybody because they're going to die.
Yeah, they did kill a whole lot of people in that show. So.
Oh, what about Game of Thrones?
I know, right?
So there's a lot of deaths that are tragic, but I think the show really started off with Ned Stark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this before because he was the front runner.
Yeah.
He was the most well known.
Yeah, it really set the tone. That season 1 finale, which is when Ned Stark bites it. Sean Bean is the name of the actor that played Ned Stark. And he was arguably at that time one of the biggest names in the cast.
Yeah.
And he played the head of one of the 2 major families of Game of Thrones. And so
it's like, how are you going to keep going after this?
Putting him to death at the end of that episode, at the end of the first season, you're like, wait a second, they're not going to kill off Sean Bean's character. He's the driving force behind the show. There's no way they're going to kill him off. And then they did. And it was like, what?
Okay, Grey's Anatomy, Derek Shepherd.
I used to watch Grey's Anatomy, but I quit watching before Derek ever bit it.
I knew Derek was going to die just because of spoilers, and I've watched it. And so it's, that one's a well-known spoiler.
Next on the list is Dexter. Character death is Rita Morgan. Rita was Dexter's girlfriend / wife. Her murder, I think near the end of the show, was shocking to me.
Yeah, this is another one I want to watch. Okay, Lost. I have started this one. Obviously, you kind of think, okay, well, a bunch of people died at the beginning. But I'm guessing of the remaining characters, then the one that really shocked everybody was when Charlie Pace died.
Yeah, so many people died or got killed off in Lost.
That was the little hobbit, wasn't it?
Charlie Pace was played by, I can't remember the actor's name now, but it wasn't so much just that he died. It was also what he was doing when he died, the effect of what he was doing when he died. It was all just it was an intense scene and an intense time on Lost for those of us that were watching. And
okay.
Next on the list, Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad. I did not lead with the... I forgot that I was supposed to lead with Breaking Bad, and then...
Breaking Bad's been off the air for a little while.
Yeah. Hank Schrader was the brother-in-law of Walter? Was his name Walter?
Yeah.
Was married to Walter's sister and was a DEA agent, I think. And that always made it kind of awkward for Walter.
A little bit. So The Walking Dead which I think now is on working on another spinoff. Or I have not seen this, heard it's great, but this would be talking about Glenn.
Yes. Glenn was a fan favorite. And so when they killed him off, people revolted. They couldn't believe, how could you kill off Glenn? That's terrible.
Oh, this next one, of course it goes to you.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The character death in question is Joyce Summers. The episode was called The Body.
He knows the episode name. That is not written on this outline. He just knows that.
It is a highly celebrated episode of Buffy. From all of the episodes, they did a very interesting thing with it. Buffy is basically a superhero, right? She's got superpowers, super strength. She can do flippies and
We get it. You like Buffy.
Okay, well, the thing is, Joyce is her mother.
Okay.
And with all of these superpowers that she has, she can't save her mother. Her mother just, she walks into the house and her mother is just
Isn't
laying.
this the one you were telling me doesn't have any music to it?
Yeah. Most TV shows, you may not even notice it. You're so used to it, but TV shows have a score. At least some kind of music is playing in the background.
Make you feel excited or on edge. Or
Buffy was no different, but for this episode, they did not have any score at all. No sound other than the characters made when talk. It was a really intense episode.
Okay, MASH. Love this show. I don't know that I've watched this show in consecutive order.
Syndication forever and ever.
Yeah, so it's on. It's like, hey, let's watch this. I know my mom loves it, but Henry Blake. And so I do remember this character. I don't remember the scene when he died, but he was a beloved character.
Yeah. The last one on the list is Sesame Street. I don't think we have to worry about spoilers for something like Sesame Street because this was a long time ago. This is back when I was watching Sesame Street, so it's been a minute. But Mr. Hooper on Sesame Street was one of the original human characters on Sesame Street.
And of course, this episode was to teach kids about grief and death, and because Sesame Street always had good little lessons.
Sure, absolutely.
Now that we've bummed you out and hopefully not given any spoilers for these different TV shows, let's talk about when a loved one passes away. They may leave behind various types of debt. Nobody has a barcode on the bottom of their foot. Court, you're kind of looking at me like maybe you do.
Ladies and gentlemen, apparently Katie didn't get the memo. She doesn't know about the barcodes on the bottom of everybody's feet.
Maybe mine's in white ink, and that's why I can't see it. You know, remember white ink tattoos were the big thing?
I do not remember that because
It was short-lived. No, I don't have a white ink tattoo. I just remember that was the big thing and nobody knew how they were going to age. When you pass away, it's not like you can plan it where you don't have anything charged on your credit card. You don't have any kind of outstanding bill. You pass away frozen in that moment of time and you've got, your McDonald's that you just went and got on your credit card. You've got your mortgage payment. You've got your car note. You've got different things. So when you pass away, it stops. You are then left with essentially your credit cards, your mortgage, your medical bills, your student loans, your taxes. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let me talk about taxes for a second. Even when you die, you still have to do a final tax return. So if you die this year, somebody still has to file a tax return for you next April 15th for your 2025 taxes.
Right.
Sometimes you have to file taxes for your estate, which could linger on multiple years after you pass away.
Definitely could. I've got an estate right now that won't go away. The big question is, am I responsible for the debts of this person, this loved one who passed away? Am I responsible? And
Grandma went and bought like a whole bunch of stuff at Costco right before she passed away. Am I responsible for this $10,000 Costco credit card bill?
The simple answer is it depends.
Court gets to use his favorite phrase.
It does depend on the kind of debt that you're talking about. But for the most part, no, you're not going to be responsible. If grandma left behind a credit card bill.
Okay, so they're just going to wave a magic wand, it's forgiven?
Well, that depends, again, on whether or not grandma had the money to pay the bill.
Okay. So grandma still will have to pay.
Well, grandma's estate would have to pay.
Okay. So, and just everybody get on the same page. Grandma's passed away. Everything she owns then becomes her estate.
Right. In the broadest sense.
We're going real broad.
Like checking accounts, your bed, car, your house, all of that is part of your estate. People hear the phrase death tax thrown around a lot. Well, the death tax is a tax that is charged to the estate of someone whose estate is basically valued above the estate tax exemption, right?
Yeah.
And so right now that exemption is up over $12 million. So you have to have a pretty hefty estate to even pay a tax, death tax. But it is based on the value of everything that is in your estate. Not necessarily everything that is in your estate will go through probate, which is the court process that some people have to go through to settle an estate and to settle that estate's debts. When we talk about an estate, I kind of tend to use the term estate in the broad sense of the word, but I also sometimes talk about an estate when I'm actually talking about probate. I'm going to try really hard to separate out and distinguish so that you know which one I'm talking about. But basically, your estate, in the broad sense, is responsible for your debts. Your debts become part of your estate just as much as your assets become part of your estate. How those debts are paid, or if those debts are paid, is going to depend on how much money you had when you died. If your family members open a probate to handle your debts, then creditors, any creditors that you have a period of time to file claims. Hey, he owes us this money for this debt. Maybe a hospital bill, maybe a cable bill. It could be anything. But they file claims with the probate court, and if there is no objection to those claims being paid and the estate has sufficient funds to pay those debts, then those creditors, after they file a claim, will be paid for the claim that they filed.
Let's play this out. Grandma's passed away yesterday.
Okay. My God.
I'm in your office. We're talking. Grandma told me that she left me $50,000. I already went and put a down payment on a car.
Don't do that.
Why not?
Well, because a number of different reasons. First of all, just because somebody says they left you something doesn't mean they actually left you.
Oh, yeah, of course.
People can change their wills. So if she wrote a will that had you included in it and then you did something to tick her off, she could very well go back and change her mind and change her will, and you don't get anything anymore.
She could have spent it.
Yeah, she could have had $50,000 that she had earmarked for you, but then she saw something shiny that she wanted, and she spent that $50,000 on something shiny for herself. Or, as is the case with a lot of people, unfortunately, that money got eaten up by her medical bills and the fact that she had to go into long-term care. So there's no money left to pay out. The beneficiaries of a person's estate, somebody could change their will.
Yeah.
Somebody could change their will. Somebody could spend the money. Unfortunately, you might end up having, like I said, to go to long-term care, and that can eat away at a person's money quicker than just about anything.
But it's also one of those, okay, so we've seen this happen a lot. Most of the time, you hope that when someone does pass away, they're older, so they're getting their Social Security benefit. They're getting their pension. Depending on when you pass away, that money may have to be sent back. So before you can even really start looking at what money is left, you have to figure out who has to be paid back. What order do they have to be paid back in? Right. And so that's where it's good to don't go spending money that you don't have, because you got to figure out who gets paid back. So it could be, hey, you've got this $10,000 Costco credit card. We got to pay that credit card off. Or you've got these medical bills. Now, one of the mistakes that I think we hear a lot is that people will come in and somebody's passed away and they keep getting all these medical bills. And so they start paying them out of their money, not the one person who passed away, because they think they're going to get paid back, right? What about that?
Yeah, don't do that.
Just don't.
Especially if you're going to have to probate the estate, you have to follow the probate rules. And for instance, somebody might say, oh, well, should I keep paying this mortgage payment, or should I keep paying for this insurance? And then the estate can pay me back. Well, for instance, in the state of Tennessee, there are specific rules about what debts of the deceased person you can continue to pay and how long you can continue to pay those debts and expect to be repaid for paying those debts. And it's a very discrete period of time that you
So
can
I'm
do
hearing
that.
it depends. There's a lot of it depends.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, don't start paying people with grandma's money until you know the order. Because, for instance, if we determine that grandma only has $100,000 left and she's got all these
$200,000 in debt.
Yeah. We then that becomes an insolvent estate. The estate lacks sufficient assets to cover all the debts. And so that's where state law is going to determine which debts are paid first.
Yes.
So we're looking at, taxes, secured loans, which secured loans is kind of like a car.
Yeah.
Where you've got something there that you can repo it back.
Yeah. Usually people's biggest secured loan amount is going to be either a car or a house. Yep. And both of those things are, the loan is not paid off, then the creditor that made the loan gets to take whatever the thing is that was securing the loan.
Yeah.
And so if it's it's a mortgage on a house, then they could repo the house. Now, generally speaking, they would be one of the first ones to get paid if you were to probate the estate. But houses also in Tennessee don't become part of the probate estate unless you specifically direct that you want the house sold and the money to be part of it.
Yeah. Lots of
little moving parts, yeah.
And so it really is, what is the particular case with grandma with this situation? Figuring out. So that's why you can't just easily say, oh, grandma had all this money in these bank accounts and these investment accounts. You've really got to nitty gritty look at it, lay out all the people that have to be paid off. And sometimes there's stuff that lingers. And that's why some of these estates get left open for a while because, okay, there could be a bill that only gets sent quarterly.
Yeah.
And you have different things like that. And we've had situations where it's been a husband and wife and the wife didn't know about some of the different expenses that her husband took care of. And it's kind of, how do we pay for these? How do we do this? So when you look at just like a bankruptcy, there's this particular order of the company's going bankrupt. Who do they pay off first? Same thing when somebody passes away. Who gets paid first? And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but inheritance is the last, which is where I'm going to plug this right now. This is why I always harp when I'm doing financial plans, when I'm meeting with clients, do not count on inheritance money. Do not count on it. That is purely a windfall. And even when that person dies, until you know that the check is being written to you, do not start spending that money. Do not start allocating that money. That is icing on the cake. That is extra that once you have your hands on it, we can divide it out. But you cannot bank on that because you're the last one to get paid.
Yeah.
Because, hey, that tax bill that you got to pay 6 months or a year from now, that's going to have a tax bill with it. So you got to save some money for that.
There are obviously some exceptions. Like, for instance, you mentioned investment accounts, bank accounts. If that is a joint account, then someone else whose name was also on that account, they have just as much ownership of the assets in that account as the person who died did.
So how an account is titled is very important. Same thing with property and things like that. Joint, you got to think about that. So joint debt.
Ah, yes.
Then if both names are on the house.
Yeah, you would still be responsible for debt that you co-signed for or that you...
So what? If you and I owned a house, I pass away, you can't be like, well, I only own half of it now. I only have to pay half the debt.
Again, in the state of Tennessee, if you're a married couple and you own a house, you each technically own 100% of the house. So if one of you passes away, the other one automatically owns 100% of the house and is also going to be responsible for 100% of the debt on that house.
You can't have all the fun and not the debt.
Yeah.
Briefly on this outline, community property, kind of touch on that a little bit just so we've done our due diligence on that part.
Yeah, I will just say, broadly speaking, I'm an attorney in the state of Tennessee, and the state of Tennessee does not have community property laws, so I'm not super familiar with exactly how they work. But Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin are community property states, and you basically everything that is community property is half yours and half your spouse's, and that includes not just assets but also debts.
I mean, if you guaranteed a debt for somebody, then the guaranteed of the loan for the deceased, you're liable. Credit cards. One of the things I thought about with this is if it's a joint credit card, then obviously that person who's still alive is responsible.
Yeah.
What about if you are an authorized user? And let's distinguish the difference of that. Like, I have an American Express card and I have put my husband as an authorized user. He can use that card. It actually pops up on his credit score. He can see, but at the end of the day, it's my card.
Yeah.
So if I pass away and I have a debt on that, is he responsible?
No. For a few reasons that would make a terrible amount of sense if I explain them all. But just generally speaking, imagine if you could just say someone was an authorized user on all of your credit cards and that made them responsible for all of the debt. You could be adding people to your credit cards. And
I'm just spacing them all out.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be fair. So that's
it's kind of in a formal way, like letting your kids use your card.
Yeah.
You're just making it where that person has a card of their own.
They have a card. It has the name on it, but that debt does not actually fall to them unless they were co-owner of the card itself from the beginning.
Medical debt. Medical collectors are scary. Even utility, like the past due, you're delinquent, things like that. If somebody's passed away, there more than likely it's going to be a lot of medical debt.
Yes.
It's going to be built up. And if you've paid any medical debt recently, like, I'm pregnant, and so I keep getting so frustrated because once a month or something, because I'll get like a $5.34 bill here, and then I'll get a $10 over here and a $2, and I'm like, oh, this is so annoying.
Yeah. You never know, like, okay, what is my balance right now?
Yeah, like, what is it? But so you're going to get bombarded with that. As the person who passed away, because it's going to be the ambulance bill, the hospital bill, the blood work bill, the testing bill, like
The
all
doctor
this.
bill. I mean, like everybody's got their own bill that they send out.
Yeah. So then you're overwhelmed and you're hearing court tell you, don't pay it, don't pay it, don't pay it. But then they're stacking up, they're piling up. That is probably the hardest thing, because we've had clients who are like, I always pay my bills, I always pay my bills. Remember, it's not your name on that.
Yeah.
And now if it is your name on it, then we need to address that.
Well, again, if we said already, but if you guaranteed somebody else's loan, or if you were a co-signer for somebody else's, that does become your responsibility if something happens to that other person. And
it may be something like, there's the depends, because if you're keeping the house, things like that, and the utility bill was in your husband's name, he's now gone. Well, you want to keep the utilities going.
Yeah.
So keep paying that as you work to then get the name switched, which is a whole other thing as well, getting, debt switched or getting things like that. So mortgage debt is obviously those who are going to be inheriting the property or inheriting the debt. We talked about this a little bit already with the home and how, you've got different options, but if you were left a house, then you can keep the house, keep making payments. You can sell the house off and pay off the loan. You can arrange a short sale or a foreclosure, disclaiming the property if they do not wish to assume responsibility. I watched this cute movie on Netflix the other day, and part of the mother's wishes is she left that she did not want the house to be sold for a year. But because she had specific reasons why she didn't want it to be sold, she then set aside a trust that had the money set aside that would pay any kind of like property taxes, debt services for that house for that year. So that was structured that way. But obviously that's a whole horse of a different color when you get into there's multiple beneficiaries that potentially could benefit from this house. How do you sell it? Things like that. And we did that episode.
Yeah.
Student loans. Whew.
Two of my favorite debts, and by that I mean my least favorite debts, but two of the worst possible debts are student loan debts and hospital bills. I hate them. They're hard to get rid of. Student loan debt are very hard to write off. Even filing bankruptcy doesn't get rid of them.
They switch owners, they switch rules, they become highly political. So there's lots of different changes that keep happening with that.
Oh, definitely.
And student loans are ones where parents can open them up, and then it could be the parent's name, it can be the kid's name, like who's liable for them. And that's always a big concern that we try and I think what happens a lot of times, and I've seen this, is there's a rush and a panic to establish a student loan. And there's not a lot of education on the front end on the best way to do it. And people are just like, well, I got to get my kid to school, or I got to do this, or kids thinking, I just got to pay my bills. It stays with you.
I didn't much think about it at the time, but when I went to law school, we had to take out loans for me to be able to pay for law school, because we went from me being sole income earner to my wife going back and becoming an income provider while I was full-time student. And so we had to take out loans to make ends meet in the meantime. I didn't much consider, that is my chair squeaking.
Sure.
I didn't much consider exactly what the prospect of paying those loans back would be after.
The interest rates, everything like that.
Now, I will say this, federal loans, the loans that you get like Perkins loan, Stafford loan, stuff like that, those are generally discharged upon the debtor's death.
Okay.
So those usually will go away. But other loans, if you take out private loans, those are going to stick with you. And
the student loans definitely have it depends. And that's where if somebody ever calls us and says, hey, I need to talk about my student loans, it's like, hold on.
Yeah.
We got to dive deep into exactly who owns your student loan, what exactly it is. So that would be one to make sure there's not student loans out there.
A good rule of thumb is to start with, if you get a call from somebody that your decedent owed money to, the best thing you can start with is notify them that he has deceased.
Yeah.
Tell them if there is or is not going to be a probate opened. If you get something in the mail, then you can send back a letter saying basically the same thing. This person is deceased. Include a copy of the death certificate if you have it.
That you may or may not be getting paid back. Things like that.
The estate is solvent or the estate is insolvent. There will be a probate. There won't be. That kind of information, provide that as quickly as possible to the creditors. And a lot of times, a credit card company is used to people passing away, and they basically get left holding a bag full of nothing.
I mean, taxes is the other part. Obviously, if you have back taxes, you've got debt with taxes, that's another one that we want to make sure that debt is taken care of. And usually that ranks up to the number one spot, that taxes, IRS wants to be paid first above that Costco credit card.
Oh, yeah.
Don't be bullied. The acronym is FDCPA. It's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Protections. So they didn't put the last P in there as their acronym. Anyways, what does this do? It protects consumers and family members of the deceased from abusive, unfair, or deceptive collection practices. So they're not supposed to harass or threaten you. They're not supposed to mislead you for legal obligations, and they cannot publicly discuss the debt. That's what they're supposed to do. But it's also, we know there's a lot of scammers out there. I get calls randomly about my student loan debt. I don't have student loan debt. I know this. Mm-hmm. I keep getting a text message about some, what is highway toll booth?
Oh, yeah. That's a scam. That's a big scam right now.
Yeah, that like a highway toll fee. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, and it'll be from some state that I've never
even been through. And so people are predators. And so if they know that someone's passed away, they're going to be trying to get money out of you. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be trying. So be wary as well.
Ask questions.
Say, I'm not giving any information. I will have my attorney reach out. Do things like that, because it's better for us to draw it out a little bit further and be like, I want to make sure you're actually legit before you start giving all this information out. And then now all of a sudden you have been a victim of fraud.
Yeah, you have a right to receive proof of the debt, verification of the debt. You can limit how much you will or will not talk to people who are trying to collect the debt. Yep. And then obviously, if they violate any of these rules about harassment or misleading you or anything like that, you can report them.
Yeah.
And I would certainly highly recommend that you do file a complaint if the collector violates any of those rules.
Yeah. And usually it usually is those medical, because they'll pass it on to collection agency.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
they're terrible about that.
Yeah, they sell medical debts to collection agencies almost. I mean, like, they barely give you time. Even if you're alive and you want to pay it, they barely give you time to pay it before they turn
it's like, and with this day and age in the mail, like the mail is not as reliant. And especially if you're having issues getting access to the deceased email address, they have everything set up as paperless. Like, that's the other thing, is there's so much that unfortunately, yes, you want to grieve, but there's a lot of housekeeping that needs to happen after somebody passes away to make sure everything's kind of cleaned up. And that's why you have to have a little bit of patience, because closing out an estate for somebody takes time.
Yes.
I think we've talked about this a good bit. We've kind of beaten this to death of...
Oh, Katie.
I didn't mean it. So we're not beating people to death around here. There is a lot of different components that go into this. And so hopefully, let's answer this question. Are you inheriting your loved one's debt when they pass away? It depends. More than likely, you are not personally going to be inheriting the debt, but it could lessen how much you actually receive.
Yes.
So that's a different way to look at it.
You may not inherit as much if they left behind a lot of debt. But,
you may inherit a headache of trying to deal with closing out their estate.
If your parent or loved one who passed away leaves behind a significant amount of debt and not a significant amount of money, that is not your problem.
No, they're not coming after you. It doesn't mess up your credit score, anything like that. It's just, it is what it is. And that's where, don't go and play the system though and try and, rack up a whole bunch of debt the day that you feel like you're dying. Like, that might send some red flags.
That could be bad.
And don't pull a weekend at Bernie's and, the person's actually dead and they're still going and using their credit card. Losing a loved one is very difficult. Navigating how to deal with the debt and how to really close out an estate doesn't have to be alone. You've got great partners you can work with. And that's why it's good to kind of wave the white flag and get help from an attorney, a financial advisor, a CPA, maybe all three, whoever it is, to really make sure you're considering all the ins and outs. And again, remember that tax return, because that's another big component of this. Make sure you just don't get taken advantage of, and process what's happening, but then put, steps in place to make sure you cover all the details.
100%.
Bullseye.
And there's the closing bell. Ladies and gentlemen, you've made it to the end of yet another episode of the Bullcast Podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please feel free to go to your favorite subscription service and sign up to have our podcast delivered directly to your device every single Thursday at noon. If you would like to find out more about any of our cast of characters, that would be Katie, Cortland, Cameron, or Nicole, please feel free to go to our website. That website is bullcastpodcast.com. We've got pictures up there. We've got bios. You can find out all about us. And we've also got a place where you can and drop a comment or suggest a topic you'd like to hear us talk more about. But I mentioned pictures. If you like pictures, we do have an Instagram handle. That handle is @BullcastPodcast, and we also have an X handle, which is @BullcastPodcast as well. Finally, just rounding out the social media, we have a Facebook page, which is Bullcast the Podcast. So you can check us out there. But Katie and I do work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. And if you'd like to find out even more information about us, find out about what we do, find out about what we could potentially do for you, find out about our amazing team, and find out about our boss, David Pickler, please feel free to go to that website. That website is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E. Ladies and gentlemen, we have given you hopefully plenty of information and certainly enough to avoid having to pay somebody else's debt if they pass away. So for now, I am Court.
I'm Katie.
And we're done.